People who get tarot readings or astrology readings, they're completely gullible and stupid because none of the stuff is even real. Oh, and it will also lead to Satan and you're going to lose your soul. So just like Jesus, take the wheel. We've heard that a million times, right? All over the internet, on YouTube, every social media platform. And that's exactly what I want to talk about today in this episode of Tarot by the Hour. Hello and welcome, or welcome back if you've been here before. My name is Maria, and I want to address the topic. Ooh, so YouTube works. So I want to talk about this whole notion of tarot being a scam. Astrology, I will just include that in the conversation, but I'm going to talk mostly about tarot. And Carla is here. Hi. Hello. Happy Saturday. Thanks for being here. And yeah, I mean, there is a reason why people say that. And they're not really wrong in a certain way because, well, as old as this practitioner is, and especially in the age of social media, there have always been scammers, and social media is making it so easy to scam people in this kind of way. So that nowadays, since most of the readers, they have a YouTube channel, some have a Facebook profile, or they have an Instagram profile, TikTok, whatever, it is so easy to just copy a profile, use the same profile picture, steal the latest content, upload it, and make it look like the actual reader's profile. But when you really look at it, you can see that nowadays, most of the legit readers that do this as a profession, they have either the blue check mark, or like when you look at the profile of someone who is then messaging you privately saying, oh, the spirits have called to me, I need to give you a message, pay $200 and I'll tell you. If you look at those profiles, you can see that all the content they have uploaded was uploaded on the same day, which is not the fact with the original creators. The name is a little bit changed. Maybe there's an underscore, all that. It doesn't really line up with the original creator's account. So that's a dead giveaway of how to spot a faker. And we also know, and the readers have said this multiple times on all the platforms, they will never talk to anyone in a private message and try to get a reading out of someone, or like give a reading and try to get money out of the people. They will never say, oh yeah, the spirits have told me I need to give you this message and it's very urgent, life or death, whatever kind of thing. That just doesn't happen. And Angie's here. Hello, thanks for being here. Whoops. So yeah, this whole fake reading solicitation on social media is really easy. I've had it on Facebook and Instagram that people have messaged me. And the way that they do it is, of course, they also go into the list of followers, and that's how they know who they can write. And that way, it's not as suspicious because if you're following that person on social media anyway, so that's how you see the connection. If someone that you didn't follow would message you out of the blue, that might be a bit suspicious. So they only go after the followers. But yeah, no one will ever do that. One time, someone tried that with me for the same reader. I've had that twice on Facebook. And the second time, instead of just blocking and deleting, I had a little bit of fun with that. So I was playing along with it a little bit. Unfortunately, I don't have that chat log anymore because they've deleted it. And yeah, so I was like pretending to go along. It's like, oh, okay, interesting. So what's the message? And then they were trying to get the money out of me, and I was playing dumb, like, oh, I don't have a credit card or anything. I don't have any PayPal. So can you just tell me the message? And I was just doing that until they got annoyed with it, and then they they left. So yeah, I allowed myself to have a little bit of fun. Why not? I mean, if they've taken the time out of their busy schedule to message me personally, it would be rude not to answer, right? Okay. So yeah, and they try it with all the followers, and they might get a hit with someone who is in a very vulnerable situation in that moment. And so that person, because of something going on in their lives, might not be thinking clearly, and so it's easy to fall for that. Another thing that these scammers do is tell you that, oh, there's a curse on you. Pay $250 and I'll lift it. Or if you are even luckier, then they will say, I placed a curse on you. And if you want me to relieve you of that curse, if you want to live a good life, pay me, or else that curse is going to destroy you. So those are the options with the curses. And yeah, so they will try to do that, but don't worry about that. And they try to manipulate you and like with fear and all that time. And nowadays, even more than before, we also have this thing of like coaching. And all, like everyone can tell or can call themselves a coach, a life coach, a spiritual coach, a this coach, that coach, whatever. And so I've watched, like what prompted this whole discussion was I was watching a video of a German YouTuber who tackles all kinds of topics. And she was talking about the spirituality scam thing. And she showed a clip from like, there was this, like a conference where it was an entire auditorium full of people. If I had to guess, I'd say at least like 2,000 people there. And then there's that one person on stage with like the big screen behind them where they are blown up. And then it's like, and then I stood up and I changed my life and I said yes and all that stuff. If you want that too, for the small price of $4,444, I can teach you how to do that and you will be successful for the rest of your lives. And then they also say, this example of like when someone says, because that's the main thing people will reply, oh, that's so expensive, I can't afford that. And then they will shame you into paying that. And they will say, so you don't have that kind of money to invest in your own life? So you want to be unlucky, or whatever word they use to, make you feel guilty for not taking that? Or do you want to pay this price once and then have the best life ever? We also have an installments payment plan, so you can also do that with interest, of course. So they will actually guilt trip you into buying their program, and some people fall for that too. Doesn't say that it will help. Maybe for some people, it might actually do something because it's all about implementation, but most of it is just hot air. I mean, we've known this from some televangelists. And the danger with that is if you target vulnerable people once again, and the first course doesn't help, of course, they will always have an upsell. There's another course, and there's another course. Or maybe this one particular coach didn't help. Here's another coach. And then people buy coaching after coaching, course after course, because they might then think that maybe I'm not implementing this correctly. I might be doing something wrong. I need it. And then they can get addicted to that kind of stuff too, just like people can get addicted to tarot readings as long as they don't get the validation. They're seeking that validation over and over again. So yeah, that's like the dangerous part of the whole scamming thing. So I can see why people that don't really have anything to do with tarot or astrology, and they don't really know what it can do, it's easy for them to say, oh, this is a total scam. They're just taking your money. Don't fall for that. I can see why they would say that. So yeah, they can make lots and lots of money, and they usually make more money than the actual real tarot readers or coaches or anything like that. And yeah, they will always create this sense of urgency. No legit reader would ever create that kind of sense of urgency, because it's always up to you. You have free will to do whatever you want with your life, and shaming you into doing that, that's just a sales tactic. Don't do that. So yeah, unfortunately, the platforms like Instagram, Facebook, whatever, they don't even care about this kind of stuff if you report it. So the best thing is to just do block, delete, whatever. Because, yeah, even if they say in their like in their rules for engagement, like they don't care about it. If you report it, nothing ever happens. They will just make another fake profile, whatever. Okay. But then something that I've also said, like, why do people even get readings? So there's different types of people who are getting readings. One group of people you could call the curious explorer, which also the skeptics, I think, kind of fall in. They just want to see what happens. They're not the gullible type. They're open-minded. They don't necessarily believe in tarot or astrology, Reiki, crystals, whatever practice you're doing. And sometimes they just want to test you. I've had that as well. I was tested by a police officer because one of my coworkers that I read for, she had her boyfriend with her at that time. Like, they invited me over for dinner to her house, and then she wanted a reading, and then he was sitting right there, and she was like, oh, do a reading for him too. And then he was like, yeah, let's see. I don't believe this, but let's see what you got. Thankfully, I didn't embarrass myself, so what I said resonated with him. But yeah, those skeptics are out there, and they're gonna be like, yeah, let's see if this is real. Let's see. And that's perfectly fine. I mean, if they're skeptical, they can be that. And even with someone who actually really believes in tarot and astrology, you can have a miss. You can say something that they might feel doesn't really resonate with what's going on. So there's never a surefire guarantee for anything. It's just, you know, even a reader can have a bad day and not even realize it. It happens. We're all human. And another group of people that might want to get a reading, or that even does that for themselves, is the type for self-reflection and self-growth, self-empowerment. And they use it as a tool. And that's the best way to go about this, if you see it for what it is, because it is a tool that can help you, give you new perspectives in life. It can help you look in a direction that you may have ignored. It can show you different possibilities, and you will realize when you use that, you can use it to your advantage, and you can try to find different angles of something that you haven't thought of before. Like the Hangman tells us, you know, look for different perspective and see what it feels like. Or with astrology, for example, when you look at your chart, your blueprint, basically for who you are and where your talents, your strengths and weaknesses are, and suddenly, let's say you're like in your late 30s or something, you have worked a specific career for a long time, and you kind of feel called to something different, but you can't really explain it, and you don't exactly know what you want to do. You might have an idea. In your astrology chart, it can actually tell you what you are good at, so to speak, like where your talents are. And then maybe that might explain something. It might help you to narrow down what you're looking for, so that you can then make an informed decision of how to change your life and choose a career that's more in line with how you feel and who you want to be. So yeah, it's all there. But still, astrology doesn't make that choice for you. Astrology didn't tell me that I would enjoy journalism or video creation, something like that. No, but it's in my chart. You know, my Gemini mind just enjoys that kind of stuff. I enjoy doing research. It's in my chart. On the other hand, I'm not good with math and numbers. So like being a physicist or something, that would never be my thing. It's just not mine. So some people might live a life based on family expectations or something. And when you suddenly go through a shift, or you have your Saturn return, or, the Uranus opposition around 44, the midlife crisis, and you really just want to change something, also can be explained with astrology. And it still doesn't take over your life. It might give you a sense of direction of where to look, because sometimes we simply don't know where to look. And so using it as a tool for self-growth, self-empowerment, that's the best possible thing that you can do. Some people also use it for journaling and, getting more introspection. Then the one group that is easy to fall prey to scammers are the heartbroken ones, the ones that have just experienced a kind of loss, whether it's relationship or losing a person, losing their job, any kind of loss in their life, and they just feel hopeless right now. They are very sad, they're vulnerable, and so these people are looking for comfort. They are looking for reassurance. They want their feelings validated, and promising them heaven on earth with, for the small price of $4,444, those are the ones that usually fall for that. And that's why we have, in some cases, a bad reputation because of those kinds of things, because those are the ones that the scammers attack, the weaker ones, so to speak. And they're looking for hope, they're looking for a sense of direction, they're looking for a sign, anything. And so if a person who's looking for a sign then is faced with someone who's sending them a message like that, they're going to take it as a sign. They're also going to see all those angel numbers. They're going to keep looking for these things. So the heartbroken ones, the lost ones, so to speak, they are the ones that usually fall victims to the scam. And then another group of people, they are, or we could call them the strategist or the high achiever. And they are the ones that want like a little bit of an edge, I think. And in that category, I would put like high-ranking CEOs, politicians, even royals, because we know in the olden days, I mean, even Nostradamus worked for the royal court. And, they all at some point had astrologers and tarot readers give them prophecies and foretell their futures of victories and those kinds of things, or personal fate. And you'd be surprised how many high-ranking people, like the big shots with like Fortune 500 kind of money, actually use spirituality as a guideline. There's a lot of them. Like there's also a lot of readers that make really good money because they have these kinds of clients. And I mean, even back in like old Sumeria or Babylon, they would use astrology to find out when is a good time to go into battle. If the stars didn't favor it, they wouldn't even go. They would postpone the war and say, right now, Mercury retrograde? Nah, we're not doing this right now. Tell the other side we're going to wait, like in 3 weeks, we can address the topic again. Right now is not a good time. So, people in high positions use that too for their work, actually. So it has been around for a long time, and it will continue to be around. But of course, these people normally don't say that, so you would normally never know. But they use it as an extra edge, an extra insight. And then another group that can be identified are the regulars, the returning customers. And I think people who work on the phone lines, for example, they can see that too, because they might at some point get customers that come over and over again, I was one of those customers back in like 2010. I had one astrologer that I favored and one tarot reader that I favored. And I was registered for one of those phone lines as a customer. And whenever they would have a sale where the price dropped significantly, then I would use that and I would call either one to see like what was going on and what I needed right now in that moment. And at a certain point of time, they would also recognize me and probably had a file that they would pull up on their computer really fast. And so the conversations would get a little bit more personal, and it was like I was a repeat customer. So I know how that works. And when you have this like seemingly personal connection with the reader, it also feels more comfortable and you feel understood. You feel welcomed, you feel heard and seen, even though it's over the phone line, but you feel validated. And some people simply need that. And for me, for a couple of years, this worked very well, and it was exactly what I needed. It was also during and after my Saturn return. That time really did a number on me. And so I was grateful that I had those options. And I would always make sure not to break the bank. This is another thing that can happen with these regular customers. They can also return so much, never listen, and then, just spend money after money after money. And a good reader will eventually pull the plug and tell them, we've been reading about this specific topic many times now, and it seems things are not moving as fast as you want. Maybe just give this a rest for at least 6 months, and then we can check back in again. And yeah, I mean, someone who's just after the money, they will keep them coming. They will just keep them coming. But a responsible reader will pull the plug and say, you know what? I don't really see that this is helping you right now. So maybe we can ask another question, one that is more helpful to you, and give this other situation a rest for now, and then see what's what. Oops. Spiritual Blossom has a place for notes per customer. I have repeated customers. Yeah. And I think that's true on all the lines, because once you have formed a connection with a reader, and I've noticed this myself, like I really enjoyed talking to the 2 readers that I went to. And I even had, laughs with them. I was talking about them. They would ask me like, how are you doing? Oh my God. And they would actually remember the situations, and I don't know how much they had written down on me, but it felt like they would actually remember what I told them 2 months ago when I called last time. I don't know how many customers they had in between, but it really felt like a conversation with a friend. And in that moment, it helped me because I felt more understood than, talking to my family or something, because in that moment, there was also no judgment. I could simply talk about it. I could vent. I could be emotional. So I really appreciated that these 2 women were there and that they simply just listened and they tried to give me the best advice possible. And of course, it was up to me to do it. And yeah, sometimes a check-in. Yeah. Sorry, I'm clicking a bit fast here right now. Mercury retrograde. Just going to blame it on Mercury. So, yeah. So we can, like I said, we can put the clients into certain categories. So some actually believe 100% in the guidance that you're going to give them. Some are the skeptics that try to prove you wrong. But then, does that ever really happen? But they're still curious, they're open-minded, and sometimes a skeptic can even be turned into a friendly advocate. Maybe not a believer, but at least a friendly advocate. And, it's mostly used for decision-making. Yeah, and like I said, some people are simply looking for comfort. I guess that's the most part. When you're doing a reading and you have a question, you either want validation, comfort. You want to feel seen, heard, and understood. So that's why we then go to someone else. Just like we have a conversation with a best friend, but in that moment, we might choose someone where we don't get questions, like questioning our situation that even led up to this. Like, how could you let this happen? A reader would never say that. And I think that's the reason why people would go there, because no judgment, no bad feelings or anything. Simply like, okay, tell me how you feel about it. More like a therapist would, kind of. Like a therapist would also never judge you. The therapist will only help you understand the situation and then give you tools to deal with the situation. There's no judgment because that's not anyone's place. Okay. Yeah, the Mercury. Crazy, right? Glitches and all. So now, why do people see, what are we for time? Okay, half an hour. Why do people think that clients, let's just call them clients, or readers are actually gullible people? So the number one reason is always, oh, there's no science behind it. You can't prove that it really works. Like, how can you tell me this is real? You know? And I can see that. This is, of course, you always want to have proof of something. You want, but then it's not believing anymore, then it's knowing. So here's a fine line. But with tarot, of course, there's not a mathematical formula that you can just write down, you can calculate it, and here's your proof. It doesn't work like that. There is, however, some kind of proof that you can use in this, because the one scientific method that you could put behind this is psychology. And here you can also argue therapy also doesn't have like a scientific formula. It is also listening and giving advice with certain tools and certain ways of doing things. In that sense, therapy and tarot have similarities. And there are even therapists nowadays that integrate tarot into their practice. It's not that uncommon anymore. And even Carl Jung, he was not opposed to considering a supernatural element in his ways of coming to a conclusion. He was not ruling out things like intuition, for example. And it's because of his way of doing psychology, we have the archetypes that we connect with the major arcana, for example. Whereas Sigmund Freud, for him, everything was about sex. But Carl Jung, he was actually open to the interpretation of a so-called supernatural element in his work and applying that to finding out what is troubling his patients. So there is a certain science that can be applied to it. You can also use the cause and effect method, I guess, because if A, then B. So the way to do that would be if you have a reading and you see, okay, if you do this, then that will be the outcome. And the only way to prove it is over time, I guess. So you would have to wait until it comes true. So this way of proving it would take a long time. You can't just prove it in a lab right here and now. But if you talk about like a career or anything like that, of course, implementation is key again. But if the person would follow all the steps that the cards suggest, then you can measure if the outcome was actually what was in the cards. So there are technically, theoretically, ways to prove it, but of course they are not as easily seen as simply, having like a chemistry lab or a biology lab, and then you put a bunch of things together in your petri dish, and then voila, you can see something under the microscope. It doesn't work like that. But it doesn't mean that there's no method of proving it. So In medicine, even, we have the placebo effect. When you have two types of groups, one is given the medication, one is given the placebo, you will even have people in the placebo group that will report, hey, this helped me. So I think I have the real medication. And tarot can also, in a way, act as a placebo. It can give you that boost that you need to do something, to make a change. Because if you believe in it, and it's like, oh, so the tarot card said, if I do this, I will have a good result. Of course, you have to distinguish from like, oh, the tarot cards promised me this. I'm going to be given this on a silver platter. No, 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 no. That's not how this goes. You have to do the steps yourself. And that's what people also, I think, are confusing. They think that tarot is like the future prediction thing, which it's not. And so that everything is set in stone and whatever the cards will say will come true. No. Tarot, the way that I see it, is more like a pros and cons list. You can do that on a piece of paper. Is there any scientific evidence to that? Who knows? But when you want to make a decision and you use tarot for decision making, you can do it the same way with the pros and cons list. You can have one reading for the pro, one reading for the con, and then see which option you like better. And even when you just get one reading and it's like, okay, if you do this, then that, you still have the option of deciding if you want to follow the plan or if you want to go in a completely different direction. For example, if you get a reading that has all those horrible cards in there, like the Tower, the Ten of Swords, and all that. So you have the option of doing the complete opposite to make sure that you don't get that moment, that feeling, that outcome. So all of that is still up to the person. The cards will never determine your future. That's up to you. And then, of course, besides the whole scientific argument, there are some people that say, well, if you have to pay for it, that's not really spirituality. That stuff should be free, so therefore it must be a scam. But it's a service. Just like, for example, once again, therapy. It's simply sitting down and talking, which you can also do with a friend, and you would not pay the friend. But with therapy, it's a little bit different because you will get different answers from what your friend would tell you. And Ansas, hi, welcome here. Like whre? I don't know what that means. And sip everyone. So yeah, sitting down in therapy, having a conversation with someone, and you pay them to have that conversation with you and to guide you into the right direction. Of course, you can say you can have that conversation with a friend, you can have it with family. Why would you pay someone for that? But the whole payment argument doesn't really say if something is real or not. Anything can be given away for free, but then why would it? It's a service. You would pay other people for a service as well. Even if someone is painting your house, yeah, that's physical labor, sure. And you can do that yourself as well, but you get someone else to do it for you. And so the same way, it's also a service, you know? I liked how you explained that tarot should be like guidance for like talking to, for free, like talking to a friend. Yeah. It can guide us. And I mean, that's really the best use to use it for guidance. It's not for prediction. So yeah, paying someone for it is just, yeah, they're doing a service. They're taking time out of their, especially if they do it professionally. You know, they're providing a service. It's what they do for a living. And you would never go to any other place of business and say, oh, you're giving me a service. I'm not going to pay you because I don't think it's real. You would not do that. So why are readers any different? And then I'm just looking at my notes really quick here. Oh yeah. Then there's also this stereotype thinking that the people who go and get readings, whether it's tarot, astrology, Reiki, whatever, that they let the other person make their decisions in life. So they don't even control their own life anymore, that the spiritual guide, so to speak, is making their choices for them. So therefore, it's not real. It must be a scam. But like I said, that's the people who do that, they might just be after the money, because a legit reader would always say, you know, you have to make that decision. I can point out different options. I can show you, you know, the pros and cons list. But at the end of the day, it's your life. You are the only captain of that ship. So you have to make that decision. I can't make that decision for you. And people say that it is for karma balance. Everyone has their own personal perspective. My Reiki teacher has always said to me that if I offer something, there needs to be an exchange. If I only keep on giving, then I will be out of balance. And therefore, even if it's just $5 or something, but there needs to be an exchange. In the very early days of reading for other people, I was not comfortable with taking money because I was just a beginner. So I would trade readings for other favors. Say, okay, I'm going to give you a reading and you help me with my computer project, for example. Or I'm going to give you a reading and I'm going to come over and you can cook for me or something. You know, I would like trade actual services, if you will. And that was also an exchange because I gave something and the other person gave something. So I felt a certain sense of balance. But nowadays, unless I do like the free readings on air here, when I do a reading for someone, of course, I charge. It's a service that I provide. I'm taking time. I'm doing this. I'm, you know, trying to be the best reader that I can be for that person for whatever they need in that situation. And for me, this is like a job. It's not like a job. It is a job. And so asking for money, there's no shame in that. And there's nothing wrong. And yeah, my Reiki teacher was right. Balance needs to be there in our own lives and overall. So yeah. The Gullible label, I think that's usually like if we know how people operate, like we have the scale of love and fear on either side of the spectrum, and then there's anything in between. And the people who say those kinds of negative things, they usually operate on the frequency of fear. And I think it would be interesting for them to explore why they think that way. Like, why do they think it's a scam? Have they been scammed before? And that's like their only experience they ever had, and it was a bad experience. And of course, that will turn them away and make them, you know, think the opposite of all of this. They will not see any benefits. Or have they heard from someone else that was scammed? So there might be a reason why they say this, or they've just been raised in a very skeptical environment. So I mean, there's reasons why they say that. Nobody says that simply to, you know, be a dick or something. And there's also that whole argument of over-reliance on these tools versus critical thinking. And I can see that especially the people that would fall into the category of, you know, like the heartbroken ones, that it is at some point easier if someone makes the decision for you or if someone just tells you what to do. But like I said, a good reader will urge you to go into the direction of critical thinking, like make the decision for yourself and know why you make it. So they would try to get you more to the frequency side of love and try to get you out of that fear-based operation that you're running on. And another thing that might play a role in this is the cultural and historical bias when it comes to these things. Because especially in the Western world, can only speak for that part of the world. With church and all of that, of course, we've heard it many times, and it's even written in the Bible, you shall not do these kinds of things because they are of the devil and it's bad and all of that kind of stuff. So that has been the notion for a long time, and we've had the Inquisition and all that stuff, Salem witch trials, and yeah, so we've had centuries of this being considered a bad and evil thing. And in some people's minds, it might still be registered in this kinds of way. On the other hand, we have people that used it themselves, but they would not tell you. So even during like Inquisition times, the royals were using that for their own benefits. So it's like, it's a weird story with all of this, like in history. But yeah, so there's like a cultural bias. There's also, yeah, in different cultures, how they see these things, whether it's, okay, does the culture lean into a spiritual practice, or are they all about logic and like spirituality has nothing to do here? Like where I was born in East Germany, that was all political. There was no spirituality to be had. That was frowned upon. So of course there's like a bit of programming in the mind, because sometimes it's also a matter of survival in certain places of the world, and so you just completely turn away from that. What happens when a tarot reader unintentionally misguides someone by mistake pulling a wrong yes or no card? Well, mistakes can happen, and like I said, we're all human. And the thing is, when something that I would do, if I'm not certain what a certain card will tell me, I will pull another one to get like a clarifier card and see how they play together to get a more precise piece of information. And what we can also do is draw an oracle card on top of that to get more information. So if you expand it a little bit, instead of just having one card, that might give you a broader picture of what's going on. That's what I do. And yeah, at the end of the day, it is still like, whether it's a yes or no card, the course of action is still up to the clients. So if someone comes to me for a career reading and I would say no, or yes, you're going to get this job or something, and then it doesn't happen, then yeah, that would be the wrong thing. But maybe they can take that as, okay, I want to do this, and if it didn't happen at that specific company, I still want to go after that job. So I'm going to give it a try again. And so that yes can eventually come true. And like I said, I can always have a bad day. I can be misguided in my own intuition. I'm not a machine. I'm not a robot. So I can make mistakes. And if that happens, one thing, I mean, the whole refund policy, that's for every reader to decide for themselves. But a good thing would be to never even go into the yes or no direction, because I don't always find that helpful. It's too black and white. The better questions to ask for tarot are, how can I do this? What can I do to get more like, like an actionable, tangible thing that you can do, instead of just asking, oh, is that person going to marry me? Or I don't know, am I going to ace this test? Like, from the moment that you ask and answer the question until that event happens, there's also a lot of free will in there to get from A to B. So like I said, nothing is set in stone. The cards do not predict the future, and you always have free will of what you want to do. So maybe even in that instance, when someone asks me, will I get this job? And I give the answer yes, and then they don't get the job. It could be because during the job interview, they simply weren't feeling the vibes of that company. And I've had that too. I thought that, okay, working here would be a great thing. And I would go in and interview, and like something felt off. And then I was rather happy that it didn't work out. So a lot of things can have, there's so many variables in this whole thing. So the yes or no thing, I don't think is a particularly helpful thing with tarot. And I do not do yes or no questions. I would always go for an action plan. So that would be a better way of utilizing the cards. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about this whole science thing. So what I've mentioned already is that because of psychology, for example, and also because of the esoteric connection that we have, like in some decks, I wish I had it here right now, but for example, the Hermetic Tarot, when you look in there, you have a lot of the like occult and esoteric symbols in there. So that's a whole other ball game compared to like an RWS deck, for example. So you can work on different levels with this thing. You also have the archetypes from psychology that you can dive into. So you have symbolism, and you can use all of this. You can even have Kabbalah. You can have astrology in the tarot cards because they're all linked to certain things like the decans. And you know, whichever way you want to use the cards, there's multiple ways of including some form of science in this. So to say that it's completely unscientific is not true, because even with the occult esoteric symbols, there's also something behind it. If you've watched the Da Vinci Code, for example, he explains that quite well in his lecture that he gives at the beginning of the movie, where he says that all of these symbols, especially like very easy ones, they are accepted in a broad landscape, some even worldwide, because they mean the same things in different places, so they are universally understood. The whole thing is also a language in and of itself that you can use to communicate. Because for me as a German, if I didn't speak any English at all, and I would meet a tarot reader from another country, and we wouldn't be able to understand each other's language, but looking at the cards, we would know from learning the same meanings. So that would be something where we could communicate in a way. Or with symbols. Everyone knows the heart symbol, the smiley, the sun, the lightning, or clouds, or you know, whatever, and people know what that means. It's a language in and of itself, and that is also part of science. You can also have you know, therapeutic aspects to it, which is something that I talked about in my last episode. I'm my own research project in that case, because I have experienced the therapeutic benefits of tarot and astrology as well. So in that case, yeah, I can see why some therapists use tarot in their practice. There's a really good way to combine the two. Also, another thing that we could put into science when it comes to medical things, mental health benefits. Because if used in a helpful way for self-empowerment, self-reflection, self-growth, you can get benefits for your mental health out of it, to find out how to do something, or you know, like build a certain framework for yourself to, you know, move from point A to point B. And mental health, you know, is part of medicine, therefore part of science. And there's even, so in the description box, I have put a couple of links to other articles, and there's also a link to a book, which I haven't read, but the title sounds very interesting. It's called Applications of Tarot and Astrology in the Field of Psychology by Daisy Ozem. And that also goes into this whole topic of the correlations between them, and it even provides methods of incorporating these into therapeutic settings and personal mental health management. So might be a good read. Like I said, I don't have the book, but the link to it is in the description box, as well as other blog articles where it also talks about how to use these tools in our lives. Okay. Yeah. And that was all of my notes that I had for today. So we can conclude that if tarot is being used in a productive way as a tool, that it is, because at the end of the day, it's just pictures on paper or cardstock. You're not going to get cursed if you rip up a card. It's just a card with pictures. It will not condemn you to hell or anything, but it can help you to make decisions. It can also be a guide for your intuition, because if you get a reading and it tells you one thing and you don't agree with that, that's also something, because then your intuition is going to tell you, I don't agree with that. Maybe I should try this other way. And then you have a choice. Follow your intuition, follow the cards, see what happens, try both, try neither. You know, there's many different ways that these things can be used: tarot, astrology, Reiki, crystals, whatever it is that you're working with. Even magic in this, because like with magic, it also wouldn't have like a scientific proof behind it, but it's in the way that you use it. And if you use it with being careful, with open eyes, and not out of an emotional need, then you can't really go wrong with it. Of course, scammers are never going to stop. They will always be around. They have always been around. You know, the snake oil salesmen, they will always be there. And it is up to us to keep our eyes open and to not just jump on the first opportunity that presents itself, but to take a few minutes to maybe research the profile of the person. And yeah, even like just with a good doctor or a therapist, shopping around for a while might also not be a bad idea to find the one reader that works for you. Because I've also had people that I called on the lines where the other ones that I wanted to call were not available. So I went to someone else, or because they had a really good sale and I just wanted to try them. And I was like, nah, I didn't really vibe with them. So I went back to the ones that I usually went to. So yeah, there's a lot in all of that. And tarot and astrology can be very beneficial. But like I said, there's always the danger of getting addicted. And at that point, it's up to the reader to be honest enough to say, okay, listen, this is not about the money here. I want to help you, but I don't really see that this is helping you. So this is as far as I can go. And I'm sorry, but I can't do anything for you. So you may want to try get other kinds of help, either from like a doctor, a therapist, things like that. So anyone who's legit will never just scam you out of money. Because at least for me, I also think of my karma. I don't want to get negative karma points. Okay. So I don't see anything else in the chat. So we're almost at the hour now. Okay, this has been an interesting topic, and thanks to everyone who was here today. And like I said, down in the description box, there are other links if you want to know more. And yeah, so what are your experiences? Have you dealt with scammers? Have you been getting those messages? What would you use tarot for? How can you use it in a good way? All these things that I talked about today. So leave me a comment. Tell me what you think. And then I hope you have a good rest of your weekend. And I will see you again next week. Take care, everyone. Bye.